Hello, and welcome to the saga, the Clone Saga, guest starring in this episode, the Avengers, which means everyone will love this. I'm Mike, alongside.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Vincent. And our sponsor, sort of, today, September 25th, is National Comic Book Day. What precisely does that mean? Who knows? It was probably made up by some bored intern on Capitol Hill. And if you look at the hashtag, because so many social media managers and sites just have a calendar of all these national days, there are so many weird sources that use this hashtag today. I saw a apartment complex somewhere in California make a post about National Comic Book Day. I don't know how that's relevant to them. And of course, since it's always on the same day of the year, this year it happened to not be on a Wednesday, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
But hopefully you were able to somehow celebrate National Comic Book Day. And
Hang out with you guys.
Yep. And our secondary sponsor
By reading these comics, so I'm sure you've spent it better than we did.
Our secondary sponsor is Neuroses and custom binding comic books, fitting for National Comic Book Day. And so I'm going to show some books, which they don't look very cool on the outside, so there's really nothing to show. But this, which you can't see, is S.H.I.E.L.D. by Christopher Priest and Dennis Cowan. It's a cool book. I opened to some ads.
Now we're flagged and demonetized. This
is Slingers, which is sort of relevant to Spider-Man.
Is it?
Yeah, it's from the Identity Crisis crossover where Spider-Man was wanted. There was a public bounty, so he created 4 separate identities and lived as a superhero using 4 different costumes and pretending to have 4 different power sets to get people off his back. And then he just kind of threw away the costumes, and 4 random teenagers who were mentored by the super obscure Golden Age Marvel superhero, they just like replicated or found the costumes and became the actual versions of those superheroes.
So did that happen? Did all that happen before or after Sue Dibney was killed?
Sue Dibney? It's before. Spider-Man Identity Crisis predates DC's Identity Crisis.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously, Identity Crisis is a common literary, personal thing.
Matt, you weren't here, but we already made Sue Dibney jokes. Last episode of Crisis Cast.
Go check out Crisis Cast. That's our third sponsor.
Oh yeah, I haven't been on that yet.
This is Brath. Some of these books are pretty thin too. Slingers was pretty thin, which means
Sojourn. Show that one off. That's my favorite.
Not as much bang for your buck. But on the note of Sojourn, Brath is also a book by CrossGen, and this book was written by Chuck Dixon. It's like a medieval sort of sorcery book. And here is Hercules Unbound, featuring artwork from Jose Garcia Lopez and Walt Simonson.
What type of covers are those?
What?
What type of covers are those?
How much what?
The covers. What type of covers are they?
Oh, just like on the books?
It's just hardback.
They're just cloth covers, like they're standard options.
Okay.
In different colors. Here we have, this is really the only cool book in this entire set. Here we have the 1980s Booster Gold series, written and drawn by Dan Jurgens, who will show up on this episode for like 3 pages. So this is cool to have, and it includes a quick 1-issue crossover with Superman books.
And if you're excited to see more Booster Gold, make sure to go to your local LCS and pick up Heroes in Crisis tomorrow.
Yep. Here is Route 66, written by Tony Bedard. It's another cross-gen book. It's kind of like a road trip mixed with Scream or something. It's like horror satire, but
It's like This Is Us mixed with Bad Santa.
Yep. And here is the 80s run of Black Hawk, which I'm assuming DC is going to release in like, well, if that movie gets made, they'll probably release this, and I'll be a little upset. But I'm not patient like that, even though I probably won't read this until then. So that was our other sponsor. I'm sure that was thrilling. And now to the content of this episode. We are saying hello to the legendary artist Mike Wieringo. But first, we have to dig through a Marvel team up.
Before.
Yeah, well, he very briefly, we just mentioned him, really. We've teased him. He did like some kind of pinup. But first, we have to dig through a Spider-Man team-up issue, but actually, we're going to talk about that at the end because we'll save the shit for last.
Wait, no, didn't he? He drew like the whole crossover issue, didn't he? He drew one of the whole issues of Spider-Boy.
Oh, yeah. He drew Spider-Boy. Okay, yeah. But that didn't really count. So now he's officially drawing Spider-Man. He drew Spider-Boy, and he drew a cover to a trade paperback. And before this point, he's been involved mostly at DC. He's done some Flash, and he's done some Robin. That's for the most part. And then he starts here on Spider-Man, and he'll basically have a little chunk here, which we'll only read a little bit of within the Clone Saga, because eventually Peter's back and he continues drawing the book. And then he'll come back later for Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man with Peter David around the Civil War era. And has some other awesome projects like Fantastic Four with Mark Waid. And with his co-creator here, Todd DeZago, he did the indie book called Telos Colossal, which is kind of like a furry fantasy book. I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's not actually a furry book. I think it's just like a regular sword and sorcery book, but there's a giant tiger. So I guess basically just like Talkie-Tawny. So first, Sensational Spider-Man number 8.
Yep.
I believe the cover to this issue is the cover to a trade paperback called Spider-Man by Todd DeZago and Mike Wieringo, which collects most, like 90% of their run. It's kind of frustrating that it skips like 2 issues, which is stupid. But the weird thing again is that their run straddles the end of the Clone Saga and then Peter being back. And so if you're a complete Spider-Man crazy, then there's probably also some double dipping situation there. But we have 3 covers of Sensational that we're talking about here, and we'll see some more in the next few episodes. Would you have chosen this cover for the cover of a paperback?
Absolutely not. No. Ridiculous.
Yeah. But the cover, the looter armed to the death.
Yeah, I guess.
And Ringo's inker on this run is Richard Case. And again, as I said, Todd DeZago is the writer, and he's been on the book for a while. So we jump right into things with Ringo drawing Spider-Man, swinging around and stuff. And in their narration, we get a David Copperfield reference. We have quite a few dated references in these issues. And as far as continuity,
Copperfield in person?
what?
Have you ever seen David Copperfield live?
No.
I have. It was cool.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I made a car appear out of thin air. It was awesome.
So whatever, I don't know if it was actually last episode, but whenever we were talking about it, there was the fake lizard plot with Kirk Connors. And I was like, well, we're not going to get to that for another 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And that is actually addressed here, where Ben's like, oh, I tried to look into the lizard thing, and I tried to look into the mob thing, and I can't figure anything out, so I'll have to get to that later. And that's basically just telling us that we're now at this ultimately pretty brief period where each of the books, they're continuing subplots, but you have tiny little arcs in each book, which I think is interesting. That's how I would prefer the books. But the way we do this episode format, it makes it seem like they're a little bit further out.
Okay.
So the looter, he's behind all of these D-list imposter heists that have been mentioned in the previous few issues. I think the people that we thought were involved were the Ringer, which I can't tell you anything about the Ringer, Stiltman, the Trapster,
And the Shocker.
The Shocker, and then later we get the Unicorn possibly, which it's a shame Dan's not on here to tell us all about the Unicorn. And we do get a footnote to the looter's origin as he tells us about it, and that goes back to Amazing Spider-Man 36, which I would throw to Matt, our daily Spider Bites guy, but that was like what, 40 episodes ago for you?
Yeah, that was about 45 episodes ago. Yeah.
But would you say that the looter was Steve Ditko's last great creation?
Great.
Well, besides Speedball.
No, he's not great.
But Ben has a hunch that these crimes may be one guy. But first, he has to visit Pete and MJ at the hospital. And what did you guys think of these, like, Pete and MJ scenes? We'll end with Ben.
I like, I think I like Pete and Ben's relationship at this point.
Yeah, they have good chemistry, I think.
Yeah, they do. I think they have really, really good chemistry. And it's kind of neat to see Peter Parker having a male friend because he doesn't have many of those.
I just don't like it at all. I'm just like, it always comes off feeling so forced to me.
It has in the past, but I thought it worked here.
And there's some decent comedy too. And what stood out to me is in the end of this sequence, there's a moment where MJ kind of plays the role of like the doting protective wife. And that is something that you'll see a lot, and especially with obviously Peter Parker usually being Spider-Man. And that's a very thin line to walk. And oftentimes you'll have the superhero's significant other coming off as overbearing or nagging and stuff like that. Sometimes intentionally because these writers and editors have a stick up their ass about relationships. But I think even that was handled well, where you have that comedy of her. I mean, she kind of she is being nagging, but it's done in a playful way. It's not trying to make her look annoying. Mm-hmm. It's like cute and realistic. I don't know. I liked most of the character stuff in this period so far.
Yeah, I do too.
And their question, which we'll get to in a bit, is they are deciding whether to get an ultrasound on MJ's pregnancy to determine the sex of the baby. So they're at that stage of the pregnancy. And they have apparently tons of Daily Bugles laying around, which I guess makes sense because Pete works there and all of his friends work there and they're seeing him. But I like to imagine that Jonah comes in every day and gives him a copy.
Sneaks in while he's sleeping. He's like Santa Claus of the Daily Bugle.
You know he's not doing that, though. They're probably just sending Phil Urich to do it.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, yeah.
But Pete and Ben, they do some investigation, and they think that the looter or whoever it is, they don't know precisely yet, they rob one place, and then in the newspaper the next day, which reports what was robbed, there's an advertisement for some kind of other store or business, and then the next day that place is robbed, and so on. And so they're like, oh, but it doesn't even like this doesn't even like clue them in. I mean, I guess it can maybe connects that it's the same person, but this is a weird clue. But it also makes Looter look so fucking stupid. And so Ben just selects a random advertisement, I guess, and goes over there and finds the looter.
Basically.
But he gets his ass handed to him with a unicorn's helmet, I guess, or however unicorn works.
I don't fucking know who Unicorn is.
He's a very shitty Iron Man villain.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So the looter, and also he steals the web shooters, so adding to his arsenal. And he has Spidey hostage. And then he reveals his master plan. And this is where it like got super stupid, but then ended up being like funny in a really dumb comic book way where I'm like, I kind of fucking love this.
I thoroughly enjoyed this.
The looter's master plan is to become a world-renowned scientist. And like advance like geology and meteorology. It's kind of weird.
And
Right,
somehow
he needs to-
Stilt-Man's legs are a component to that.
Well, because he had to steal to get money to fund his research.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's amazing. I love it.
But he forgot to factor in that Spider-Man's webs dissolve in an hour. And so then Ben just beats the shit out of him. But as soon as he wins, S.H.I.E.L.D. just shows up with like 20 guys. And they're like, oh, we've been monitoring him the whole time, and we thought we'd interfere right now. And so let me take that weird green rock, and you can leave now.
And I have to say, I think it's really funny to see the looter using all of these other villains' gimmicks all together at the same time. Like,
Yeah,
it's actually a really cool little fight.
yeah, it's fun. And this issue in general, I felt that it read quicker than the others.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a positive or negative way, but it was just a quick read, and it was pretty fun. It was light.
Ringo's art is great. I really like it.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk more about Ringo as we go along, but it has obviously this like cartoony style, but it's also interesting where I don't know if I'm just paying more attention, but it seems like the characters are now actually dressing like they live in 1996 for better or worse, but not actually in like a over the top cringy way.
Right.
It's hard. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but like you can tell Ringo is having fun and is paying attention.
Yeah.
So right at this point, there are some onslaught issues between this little chunk. And we know that because at the end of this sensational number 8, there is a tease of a bunch of sentinels flying through the sky. And Spider-Man's like, what the hell? But we will be covering that next episode because we want to keep a sizable chunk of Wieringo's debut together, and then we'll do all of Onslaught together. But without getting too much into it, are you guys excited for Onslaught tie-ins?
No.
Yes.
There's 3 of them. There are 2 during the event, and 1 is like a epilogue, rest in peace reminiscence.
Are there cool like guest stars we're gonna have?
I don't really think so, because the thing is, Spider-Man doesn't
Wolverine?
actually interact with the event really at all.
No.
Just when I was flipping through him, it just looked like he's fighting Sentinels.
Yeah, to my knowledge, in at least one of the issues, he spends a significant part of it like crawling through sewers, or it's not even sewers. I don't know. He's crawling through some kind of tubing. I don't understand it. But the guest star is Peter Parker, sort of with his powers back still, but not in costume.
It's not really a guest star. He's a recurring cast member at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a guest star.
Yeah, he's a supporting character in this book, in like all the books actually.
And then the third one will be reminiscing on half of the Marvel Universe dying, quote unquote.
Right.
So let's move into sensational number 9.
Okay.
And this is a 2-part arc with Swarm. And I was really excited.
I really like this cover. I don't know. I really like this cover.
Yep. Swarm is a fantastic villain. I think he's severely underrated. He is a Nazi scientist, and literally like not neo-Nazi. He's from World War II, escaped Germany at the end of the war, fled to South America, and then was turned into a hive mind of bees. Like, it's a Nazi hive of bees.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that. It's amazing.
Say the bees are back in town.
And I think he did it last issue as well, but this issue I particularly noted that Wieringo does this thing where he does the replicating image of Spider-Man. So you see Spider-Man and then you see little faded versions of how he's moving through the air, which Mike may want to have some input on this, but I think of that more as a Daredevil thing. Both Frank Miller and Romita both kind of use that technique.
Rick Burchett, when he was drawing Batman with Detective with Greg Rucka, also did it, but he also did it in very weird ways. Like there was one time Burchett was drawing it while Batman was like looking at the Bat computer and like turning his head, so you get this like really weird panel of like a Bruce with 3 heads. So sometimes not always use the best example, but definitely for acrobatic shots, I always like to see. You don't actually see it anymore nowadays, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, I think it works pretty well here.
I do want to say though, for the coloring on this issue, it's noticeably more like vibrant and more saturated, and it looks like it's more in line with the Amazing books because like the same kind of coloring is in there. So I don't know if that's a scan on our problem on us or like the coloring was decided to match Amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And so Ben is swinging around because public transit has been screwed up due to Onslaught, which, you know, you can't count on New York public transit in any circumstance.
You need New York. You're Spider-Man.
Yeah. But we learned that the bees are everywhere. There are just bees everywhere. But Ben is at work for like 1 second, and the way he learns that the bees are everywhere is his buddy Buzz shows him the newspaper.
We also see him say hello to cooks, which we've never seen before, or know that the like cooks actually work at the Daily Grind.
Yeah.
Is Buzz homeless?
I don't know what he does.
He's just always there.
I think he's homeless.
No, he has those nice shades.
But it was fun that they could finally use a pun with his name. Or they've probably done that already, I just forgot. So Desiree, the blonde modeling student or fashion student or whatever, comes right up to Ben and forces him to go on a date with her to see Rent.
Everyone has AIDS.
Have either of you seen Rent, either on stage or the film?
Neither.
No, it's the play where everyone has AIDS.
Pretty much. I don't think it's that entertaining. It's basically like a bunch of like, it's like half the cast is like white people who are like, hey, it's cool. We're hanging out with these poor people with diseases and they're gay. And then half the cast are the people with the diseases. It's kind of weird.
All I know of the show is the 3-minute song in Team America where they're watching it and they just say everyone has AIDS over and over again.
But at this point, I was about to say AIDS has only been on Broadway, but Rent has only been on Broadway a few months at this point, especially when this book would have actually been written. So it's a very topical reference. But
so for the kids at home that are
dated.
watching this is like when that popular Lin-Manuel Miranda play that you like now is that's in the theaters.
Yep. So Swarm is attacking a lab devoted to vibrational studies, and for like 3 pages shares his entire origin story and history. Well, he shares it all, but I don't think we get any actual like concrete references to his German origins.
No, he never mentions the fact that he's a Nazi.
How'd you guys feel about his dialogue bubbles? I felt some of them were a little bit hard to read at times.
Well, he has a way of talking where he refers to himself as both the first person and third person at the same time. And I don't. Vince, do you know? Has he always done that?
I don't remember.
No, I don't either. That's really obnoxious.
Yeah, it's like Venom, but worse.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there's a little bit of legibility problems, but as far as experimenting with the lettering, this is a case where it makes sense, as opposed to MJ's narration where we have to make it pink and use impossible to read cursive. Like it's a giant bee monster, so I'll let it slide. And so back to his origin, I already said where it comes from, but as far as behind the scenes, we see that he took on the Champions in his first appearance as created and drawn by John Byrne. And then that spilled over into an arc of Spectacular Spider-Man because Champions got canceled because no one cared about the Champions. And it was Bill Mantlo who was also on Spider-Man. And Swarm basically hasn't appeared since then, and that was back in the late 70s. And we're given an explanation for that because his whole master plan has been to like reform and take over the world and return it to like a more Garden of Eden kind of thing, but with lots of bees. And so he was like, I'm not going to succeed in that. I keep getting beat up by these stupid weirdos in tights. So I'm just going to go chill on this chair. And that's literally
a giant beehive. I think that's important. He's inside a giant beehive.
Yeah, on a throne. But Onslaught freaked him the hell out. So he's like trying to be fixed. That's his initial plan, is like it's almost like a sympathy thing where he shows up. He's like, this Onslaught wave fucked me up. So can you help me? And then it turns into, oh, while I'm at it, let me just try and take over the world again.
Basically.
And especially when it starts out with that sympathy angle, I was thinking if this was told 20 years later, like right about now, and if it was like, I don't know, some like crazy writer like Rick Remender or something, this could totally be this weird ass like allegory story about colony collapse disorder and like environmentalism. And I don't know if I really want that or I really don't want that. But I do want to see Swarm again.
Oh, absolutely.
So Nick Spencer, bring us in Swarm. Have Ryan.
Speaking of Spencer, he appeared briefly in Superior Foes.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in like I think he fought Spock in the Team Up book. So, and then also I want to know, Ringo, for this kind of Swarm introduction sequence, he uses bees as panel borders, which reminded me a lot of what Todd McFarlane did a lot. In Spider-Man, he would use webbing as panel borders, and then in Spawn, he uses like chains or grimy shit. And it's always nice to a little bit of experimentation, and it's not overboard here at all.
Mm-hmm.
So Pete and MJ go in for the ultrasound, and it's a girl. It's a girl that we will never see, but we will because we will travel to a different dimension. So then Ben.
Someone's gonna snack on that kid.
Yep. Someone's gonna take a nice bite. Ben comes home to find Jimmy Six and a random woman in his tub. And so we were trying to figure this out off air. It's possible that some of this is advanced in the Onslaught issues, which we will get to next episode. But as far as we know, last time we saw Jimmy Six, he was like knocking on Ben's door, and I think it is implied that he broke in.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's a little bit of a jump here. But what confused the shit out, well, first let's acknowledge that Jimmy Six being in his bathroom set off Ben's spider sense. Should this happen?
Yes.
Because it's already been established that he's not a threat to Spider-Man.
Yeah, I don't think that makes sense.
But he is a threat to his back.
And then furthermore, there's a footnote to Amazing Spider-Man number 70 when it like mentions Jimmy Six, but it's placed directly after his like female friend, who this is her only appearance. And I have no idea. This footnote made my head hurt so hard.
Amazing Spider-Man 70?
Yeah, there's nothing, and it's not Spider-Man 70 because Spider-Man 70 is well after the Clone Saga. I don't.
Well, Vince, what is this? What is this woman's name who's in the bath with Jimmy Six?
It's Harleen, which
what do we get out of that?
For the first page, I was like, okay, it's a random weird name, okay, but no, it's just so that we can get a very forced Harley Quinn joke, which I guess she hasn't been around super long at this point.
She's been in the cartoon, but
yeah. And so Ben, he's late to his date with Desiree, and she might not be an airhead. She's like actually interested in him and wants to further explore and share more of herself. And I'm like, oh, now she's an actual love interest rather than just the kind of femme fatale opposite to Jessica. But
yeah, so much for the whole not wanting Spider-Man to date a supermodel thing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, but he has to run away like right as they get into the play to stop chaos caused by bees, which I guess it makes sense. Like one bee will freak a lot of people out, but there's just millions of bees, so everyone's just going insane and crashing their vehicles into each other, stampeding old men. And so Spidey just kind of jumps around and does a few things to prevent a few mess ups. And this includes just completely wrecking some guy's Lamborghini. Which, granted, the guy pulls a gun on him, but he just smashes the hood and the windshield. So, I don't know. Someone call up Charles Soule. This guy should sue Spider-Man. So, finishing the arc in Sensational Spider-Man number 10. I love this cover too.
I like the other one better, but this is fine.
Yeah, so it's Spidey, and his costume's a little ripped up, which I don't think actually happens in the issue at all. But the rip allows you to see that he just has bee stings everywhere, and you see the bees. It's a cool like mix between a pinup and an action shot because of the stupid bees. So we open Rent is in intermission, and Desiree might know he's Spider-Man. Like they try and actually tease that, but it's obviously not the case. And so then I'm like, what is she thinking? Because she looks outside, I believe. And so it's like, oh, maybe Ben Reilly is allergic to bees. He had to rush to the hospital or grab his shots.
went, oh, that thing. So
And then we get a double-page splash of Swarm as big as multiple city blocks. And that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is probably the coolest thing Swarm has ever done.
I want
like how his
the
face is giant too.
I want the line
Like
wide
multiple swarm faces.
Yeah. I want a line wide crossover of Swarm taking over the entire world, like actually succeeding, and then everyone has to deal with him. And we're reminded at this point that the way Peter defeated Swarm before is that he doused his costume in Raid, which does not sound healthy.
You know,
No,
it's probably better than the asbestos he's put in his webbing.
That's true. And we figure this, like Ben pieces this together because the bees start running away from him because of genetic memory, which I think is sort of
Yeah,
fairly
fuck
a
that.
thing, not
Ooh,
really.
fuck that one, though. No, that doesn't make any sense. No.
it's the Clone Saga. Nothing makes sense.
And we have another fun scene of Pete and MJ. They're nesting. They're setting up their apartment for the new baby, and it ends with a crappy Winnie the Pooh painting or a sticker on the wall being used as a euphemism for sex. And it's just Winnie the Pooh like reaching into his honey pot.
It's really funny. It's kind of clever.
The ceiling.
And so then Spidey slips into the beat.
Why would you ever? You don't paint a ceiling.
What?
You don't paint a ceiling. Why is he on the ceiling painting it?
I mean,
Also, if he just got a roller, it'd be so much easier than sitting up there.
But Mike, he's Spider-Man.
yeah.
It doesn't mean you got to use your powers to do something stupid.
But how else is the reader gonna know?
Well, that's the other thing. And then his dumbass falls and just spills paint everywhere.
Yeah, he made a little mess. Also, what color is he painting the ceiling? Is it white?
White.
Okay, because I thought
Which
it was
is why would you even paint the ceiling then?
Yeah, I thought he was painting it brown, and so then I was confused why the paint all over himself ended up being white. Maybe that was a euphemism as well.
Hey.
Yeah.
So Spidey, he slips in the bee dome and talks to the vibration scientist, and he comes up with a plan using his knowledge of science. And it's something about how bees fly compared to birds, and I don't know if that's true either. I'll take it.
Well, Peter Parker has a bachelor's degree in ambiguous science, so he probably knows better.
Ambiguous science.
And he tricks Swarm into going along with this plan. And I didn't fully understand this because like Swarm has bees everywhere. Like he should have heard this entire thing. Like he's kind of standing right next to them.
Yeah, I honestly think the story kind of fell apart in this issue.
Oh no, not a Clone Saga story falling apart.
I know, right?
Well, it's really just like the last third of the issue once like as the plan gets into action. Because then it involves them like moving equipment, and there's this 2-page thing. It's not like a splash, but it's like this montage sequence, and they use like time stamps to try and create tension. And I breezed through that page because I'm like, I don't care about Ben Reilly moving machines onto the roof.
Yeah,
there is no drama here at all. And so they activate the machines, and it disrupts vibrations in the air or something, which causes it to rain bees. Which I wish we got more scenes of like the effects of that. There's a one panel where you can see like a sea of bees in the street, and it's like up to the top of a tire on a car. And I'm like, I want to see someone drowned by bees.
Ew, That's kind of gross.
And I guess because all the bees are telepathically connected through Swarm, doing all of this so sudden caused some kind of disruption. So we get these weird moments of people having migraines, and there's like a crappy like fortune teller going crazy, and we get a one-panel Cyclops and Phoenix cameo.
And then after that is Desiree, right?
Yeah.
Is she a psychic?
I don't understand. I didn't really get this because it teases again. She's like, I know why you had to do that. And Ben's like about to freak out. She's like, oh shit, she knows I'm Spider-Man. But she just assumed that Ben is hurt or not ready to move on after Jessica.
Right.
But she's still very interested. So she's like, let's take it slow. Of course, we only have like 4 more episodes. So we'll have to see what they do with Desiree. I'm kind of.
And by 4 more episodes, he means we got a lot more episodes to go.
Yep. So if you're waiting on the others, don't worry. And then the epilogue is, I guess, teasing some kind of macro plots going on. Liz Osborne, she's digging around that whole multivex Seaward Trainer mess. And some guy's like, you shouldn't be digging around. So that's going to come up. So what did you guys think of Wieringo overall and this chunk of issues, this new like tiny little era?
I really liked Ringo's art.
I think this.
Good.
You finish.
I think this might be some of the best art we've seen in the Clone Saga so far.
I was literally about to say, I think this shoots up immediately. Sensational shoots back up immediately as the best looking book of the bunch.
Yeah, and I mentioned this last episode, like right after Dan Jurgens left. And it's super weird because Dezago's been around forever, but I feel like there's like a weird shift. Like I definitely noticed that I'm not in love with it, but like I'm definitely tolerating it, if not liking the way Dezago is writing Ben, writing Peter, writing MJ, and just the plotting. And obviously, right now that Ringo's on, he's helping a lot with that contribution.
Yeah, I agree. I actually enjoyed reading these 3 issues. The next one,
yeah,
not so much. These 3 I liked.
Okay.
Well, the sensational, since it started though, is easily, I think, been the best written, consistent book. It's definitely the easiest to read and probably the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were 2 issues between Jurgens and Ringo, and even those, like, it wasn't long enough to be a huge dip. It was just like, okay, the art's iffy for a month.
Yep.
So now let's move into Spider-Man Team Up number 4. And oof. I don't know how long this issue is. It felt like it was 100 pages.
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure Kang was robbing Maya life force at the same as I read this.
I said off air, I think this definitely joins the Hall of Infamy as like easily top 5, maybe top 3 worst books we've ever read.
Yeah, so let's note some things worth noting, and then we'll just, I don't know, we'll figure something out. So yeah. The cover here is by George Perez, and we've got lots of detail with webbing, and it's not a good cover, but there's detail. You can tell sort of that it's Perez, and due to the plot and the drafting of the cover, can't totally tell that the Avengers suck. Like, if you'd actually have to look for a second to even fully tell that the Avengers are on the cover.
Right.
So if you just flash it by someone's face real quick, it's like, oh wow, there's some weird George Perez Spider-Man cover.
And really, unless you take a good hard look at Janet, like most of the characters on the cover look like themselves.
Yeah, well, besides Janet, they chose the few that aren't incredibly insane.
Yeah.
But inside, no art from Perez. He is writing, and he's in a little period at this point where he's doing that. He's also the regular writer on Silver Surfer. But after, like in a month or two, he's about to go join the recently departed Dan Jurgens to work on the rebooted Teen Titans book. He was the inker throughout that whole run, kind of sort of pretending that it had a legacy, at least artistically, with the Teen Titans history. The art within this book, we have like 5 artists, and it's split up by chapters, but they're not fully labeled as far as which artist is doing which. So we have Steve Geiger. I think he does the bookend chapters. Derek Robertson, Brandon McKinney, and surprise, Dan Jurgens does a few pages in here somewhere. But I honestly, well, mostly because I just can't care to have paid close enough attention, but I'm not sure which pages he did. So our prologue here, we have some dumb whiteys getting killed by a demon spider in Latin America. It webs people up and then ages them, and
Yeah.
it may be that I skipped like 2/3 of this book, but I have no idea how it ages people. I don't know if it's a demon spider. I don't know what.
Dude, I read it and it doesn't even make sense.
It is a robot that thinks it is Spider-Man
Yep.
How does it age people?
because it was made by Kang.
Yep.
Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, Kang. What the fuck?
He made a robot that thinks it's Spider-Man.
And it wants to appease its master, Teen
Okay,
Tony.
no, but still, how does it age? So does it age people like through time travel, sort of?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Oh wait, it does?
Yeah,
So
it
Oh,
traps
yeah, it turns them like old. Yeah.
them really old.
All right, but where did the hallucinations come in? Because Spider-Man has like 10 pages of dream sequence later.
It's some sort of, what was it, Mike? What's it called? It's something that Kang built.
Dude, I don't know. I was
something
like
that Kang
half
built.
awake when I read this.
Why it causes hallucinations? I don't. I think he's maybe traveling through time. Yeah,
A
that's.
wizard did it.
So I don't. Look, I don't know. That the
Right.
divisions make no sense.
Judas Traveler was behind all of it.
So past the prologue, we're in Avengers Mansion, and we see Hawkeye and Iron Man sparring. But it's awful 90s Hawkeye with way too many colors on his suit, and he has the dumb hair poking out of his head. And it's Teen Tony with his awful armor. But it's just so much worse because they're like in this training sequence, but simultaneously watching video of themselves from like 30 years ago in the classic versions that everyone loves. And I'm like, why? Stop. Reverse it. And dumb mutated Wasp makes a weird jab at Hank about not watching Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
And then we're in like normal New York, and we have 2 poor mothers.
We're in Jamaica,
down,
New York.
And they were shopping at Perez Groceries, which is annoying.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
And
I hate that.
they are bystanders to a drive-by. And there's also some discussion of like the one mother, her husband is like a drug addict or gambler, but then also might be involved like on a higher level with street crime. Because, and I didn't know if it was like supposed to be like shade or something, but the one mother tells the other one, she's like, well, it wouldn't be as bad if it weren't for your old man. So is it like, is this, I don't know why I'm even commenting on it. But Spidey shows up, but it's the traditional costume. So what the hell's going on? And he also takes the goons away rather than leaving them behind for the cops. And his, I guess it's like an area effect time travel thing, also affects inanimate objects like cars.
Yeah.
And we learned this because some little kids comment on it, and George Perez tries, let's say, young urban dialogue with some yos and homies thrown in there, and
Yeah,
it's really the worst.
it's really hard to read.
And then
And
Tony Stark sexually assaults Pepper Potts.
yep, back at the mansion, I don't. Why is Pepper here? The way I interpreted this is that Tony asked her for a list of women he slept with.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. He needed documentation of all of the women the older alternate version of himself was involved with.
That is exactly what's going on.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
And so then he comes on to her, insults his best friend / her husband, then sexually harasses her, and only stops when Jarvis jumps in.
If Jarvis wasn't there, this issue would have been like full Max comic by that point.
It was going places. Yeah.
Then the question
And
is would Tony Stark be able to become a Supreme Court justice? Okay.
oh boy, don't. Ooh.
So
Ooh.
then Henry Gyrich shows up on the scene, and at this point he's a Hulk supporting character. He hasn't really been in the Avengers book for a long time, and I
Vince,
really
have a
wish it was
question.
what.
Well, when he shows up in a few more pages, why does Thor have super long hair, shirtless, and have no powers?
I'm getting to that. I have a lot to say about Thor. That's really all. That's like all my notes. So
I'm gonna be honest. After the sexual assault, I kind of just zoned out because I was kind of disgusted.
Yeah.
I just got very distracted by Thor showing up and just had to dive really deep into his concert. But first, I want to say I would much rather be reading Hulk right now, even though it's well past its peak. It's still Peter David Hulk, and it's
Yeah,
still not trash. And so then Thor shows up looking stupid. First thing,
Yeah.
he looks like Sentry, dude.
first thing to address appearance, he's possibly off model, maybe.
Is he?
So Thor is in a bad spot right now. He's being written by Messner Loebs and drawn by Mike Diodato. So both of you are familiar, and hopefully
BDSM.
a lot of our followers are familiar with Bondage Thor from the 90s. And that was a Warren Ellis thing a little bit before this. And after that, he went to this weird shirtless, longer hair thing. But
The Jason Momoa look.
yeah, but the Bondage Thor comes back for his final issue of his series, which is this same month. So
Okay.
I'm assuming this takes place before that.
Oh my god.
But while I'm on this tangent, and it's eventually not going to be a tangent because it's just going to go on long. In this
Grab your
month,
popcorn, kids.
September
Uncle Vince is gonna-
96, in September 1996, Mike Diodato draws the final issues of Avengers Volume 1, Thor Volume 1, and draws an issue of Hulk. Which I think that's kind of crazy.
That's a lot of work.
And so the former two, all kinds of books are getting canceled due to Onslaught. But Thor
Right.
doesn't get his own Heroes Reborn book. You only have 4 Heroes Reborn books. You have Avengers, Fantastic Four, and then the only solo books are Captain America and Iron Man. And so for a year and a half, the numbering of Thor returns, it transforms back into Journey into Mystery. And at first, Journey into Mystery stars the Lost Gods. And I don't fully understand what it is, to my knowledge. It's like no-name teenage Asgardian demigods or something. And it's written by Tom DeFalco. And it involves like Red Norvell, which is just obscure Thor shit no one cares about. And also, while I'm at it, I also want to point out this Lost Gods era and then also this 90s Thor before that. They use Mjolnir in the corner box but it's from a weird angle. So my entire life, I've just seen it as a noose. I'll have to send it to you later, but
Yeah.
it's pretty like I think it fits that misinterpretation, fits the era, fits the quality of it.
Yep.
But I think particularly I associated it with that because for whatever reason, one of the issues of this era related to Thor that sticks out to me is a Valkyrie one shot where Valkyrie commits suicide. So I assumed on that issue it was an actual noose.
Okay.
But even if it was, that would still be very morose.
Yeah, a bit.
So after a year of Lost Gods, then Journey into Mystery turns back into an anthology where it flips between characters. So you had a Shang-Chi arc, a Black Widow arc, and a Hannibal King arc. Hannibal King, of course, is a vampire hunter.
Hannibal King arc? What the fuck?
Yeah, written by Marv Wolfman. And all that to conclude that Thor didn't have a solo book for almost 2 years until he gets his book as part of Heroes Return, written by Dan Jurgens with his return to Marvel. But
with art by John.
But that gap is not as long as Thor's nearly 3 years absence in the 2000s. But now, let's also bring up the almost 2 years when Eric Masterson took over the role of Thor in the Thor book, plus the nearly 4 years of Jane Foster Thor. So catch this. This is what I was doing instead of reading this book. If you add this up, I rounded for those numbers, but for this, I didn't round. I added this up exactly. Thor hasn't starred in his own book combined for exactly 10 years, which is 18% of his publication history at Marvel Comics, which I think is kind of crazy.
Did you do this while you were at work today?
No. I did this like 10 minutes before the show.
Okay.
So there's some Thor trivia. But back to the shitty book, which I breezed through the rest of. What I picked up, Spidey ambushes some Avengers, but it's the fake Spidey. Then Ben Reilly finally comes into the book, and so we get Spider-Man versus Spider-Man, and then he trips balls, and so we see Uncle Ben and Aunt May freaky, and
we see the burglar too.
Yeah, we see an awesome shot of Thor in his original costume, and maybe one or two other characters in their original costumes. But then he's awakened by, does Quicksilver like beat the shit out of him?
Yeah, Quicksilver beats him.
He wakes up as Quicksilver's like punching him in the face a bunch of times.
And we are brought back to the shitty reality of these shitty Avengers. And then there's this weird, overly long epilogue, which at some point Tony Stark allows Spider-Man to drive a car, which is a terrible idea. And that's all I picked up. And then it ends.
I mean, that's basically it. Yeah.
Basically it. Yeah.
So
Crystal blasted, dude.
That Spider-Man team up number 4, no good. That's my judgment.
Don't read it.
Yeah, don't bother. Like most of the stuff we talk about, don't bother.
You would be better off reading the 10 years of Thor not starring Thor.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
In this single issue.
I agree.
Well, we'll circle this all back around because didn't you say you were doing a Thunderstrike bind?
Yeah, but it's.
Oh my God.
I have to figure out. It's pretty long because I want to include his son as well.
Oh, don't include his son. No one likes him.
No one likes Thunderstrike himself.
People like Thunderstrike.
Who likes Thunderstrike?
Thunderstrike.
Well, people that like Moon Knight is their favorite character.
Allegedly, Thunderstrike outsold Thor while it was being published, which I think is hilarious. But Marvel canceled it.
It's a leather jacket, right?
And people bought Spawn.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
People still bought Spawn.
But Marvel canceled Thunderstrike because it was selling more than Thor. They're like, we can't have this spinoff selling more than the character that everyone is supposed to like. And so Thunderstrike dies in his final issue. Very sad. And then there's an issue of Thor after the cancellation, there's an issue of Thor like really sad. He doesn't learn about it until like right after. And so he's just really sad and he's moping about, and then he finds the Absorbing Man at Thunderstrike's grave and starts a fight with him. And the Absorbing Man's like, "Fuck off, dude. He was my bro."
Wow.
Because Absorbing Man he's a valiant villain. He's mostly just manipulated by Thundra and
I
other.
prefer when he's played by Nick Nolte in 2003's Ang Lee's Hulk.
Okay, let's end this show. All right, so next episode is Onslaught, and maybe it'll be more palatable than Spider-Man Team Up number 4.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably, but it probably won't be as interesting as Mike Wieringo drawing Spider-Man. But what
if you see something interesting, go watch 2003's Ang Lee's Hulk.
No.
That's our 4th sponsor for tonight. I hope next week to talk about some X-Men stuff. We'll see if I get the opportunity.
I'm sure you make it for yourself.
All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Tune in next time, and peace.